Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday Night Live show. And tonight's guest is Charles A. Gardner, PhD. Charles has 25 years of experience in global health. He has I'm going to try to read all your stuff. You got a lot of stuff. He has had a various career, including on the Hill as the staff person working for the U.S. Congress. Charles has also served as a diplomat in the Indian Health. How do you say that again? I know how to say this word, and I've been saying it for a lot. Attaché? Did I get it?
Health attaché. I was working at the U.S. Department of Health.
U.S. Embassy, senior advisor to the World Health Organization and the UNICEF, and director of global health and children's health research programs at three major foundations: the Rockefeller Foundation, the Optus Foundation, and the Foundation for a Smoke-Free World. Thank you, Charles, for joining us tonight. We're really happy to have. I'm glad Allison got a hold of you. Got you on the show.
I only look really good on paper, like in person.
Yeah, we're all like that. We're all like that. Let's say hello to the co-host, the greatest co-host on YouTube, our resident rocker there in the middle, for our vape and news and advocacy, Tim Swift. That's our resident rocker right there in the middle.
No applause, please. Just throw money. Thank you very
much. Our international, I got new names for everybody. Our international vape correspondent from Australia, Paul. And our I added all your titles, Allison. I went through all of them. And our marketing and communications director, THR advocate, SCVA president, USVA communication director, and our co-host, Allison.
Hey guys.
Will all that fit on a business card?
No one wants that business card.
Oh man. I know you're a doctor, and we had a lawyer. So are you a doctor of philosophy? Is that what you are?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor in any useful way.
No,
so my training was in developmental neurobiology. So I studied how the brain develops.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was trying to figure it all out. I went to a couple of your pages, and I was like, is he a doctor? Is he not a doctor? Is he a PhD? I don't know how all that works, but isn't PhD? I asked you guys in the chat earlier, but it's a doctor. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I'm good. Keep going.
Go ahead, Tim. Keep going. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure.
A Bachelor of Science is BS bullshit.
Right.
A master's in science is more of the same, and a PhD is piled higher and deeper.
Higher and deeper. It's more school and more money and more time.
Yeah.
The real question is, are you getting the $10,000 leniency in your student loans? That's what we really want to know.
I hope my sons are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you getting that check in the mail?
Yeah.
Well, it's debt forgiveness. That would be my debt being forgiven, so I'd be very happy about that.
Yeah. So I shouldn't use my philosophy joke on you?
No, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I heard this one a long time ago, and I went to go look for a joke, and it was funny that this joke was one of the 10. And I heard this joke, I don't know how long ago. It's been years and years. A boy was feeling very nervous about his first date, and so he went to his father for advice. He said, "My son, there are 3 subjects that always work with women: food, family, and philosophy." The boy picks up his date and stares at each other for a long time. The boy nervously builds up, he was nervous, but then remembers what his father's advice was and asks the girl, "Do you like potato pancakes?" And she said, "No, no." She goes, "I don't like potato pancakes." She goes, and it gets quieter and quieter, and he thinks again, and he says to himself, "Oh, wait, let me try the second thing. Do you have a brother?" And she says, "No, I don't have a brother." So now he's got one thing left in his card. So he looks over at her and he asks her, so I given this some thought. He goes, the boy is going to play his last card. He goes, "If you had a brother, would he like potato pancakes?" It was that joke, or the other joke that I usually know. It says, upon awakening, a woman says to her husband, I just dreamed that you gave me a necklace of pearls. What do you think that it means?" The man smiled and kissed his wife. "You'll know tonight," he said softly. That evening, the man came home with a small package, which he gave to his wife. She jumped up and embraced him, and then settled on the couch to slowly unwrap the package. It contained a book entitled The Meaning of Dreams.
Wow. He slept on the couch.
Those are old jokes. Old jokes. I kept them clean. I didn't go dirty like I did with our lawyer jokes.
Sure.
That's kind of a sweet story. I like the last one.
Oh,
I
man.
love jokes. We just held a small webinar called "Bring Your Own Joke." So,
Oh, nice.
nice long talk. Everybody ought to have at least one joke in their stored in their brain somewhere.
I was a truck driver for 25 years. I know a lot of jokes, but I just can't tell them on this platform.
I know. Yeah. Never heard any Australian jokes there, Paul.
I'm in the same category.
Yeah, I was going to say
we can't honestly. We couldn't go down that pathway on this show.
Down on the fatal shore.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start with our hellos, and this is a way for everybody to say hello, Charles, and just let us know what kind of week you're having. And we're going to start with the guy in the middle there, Mr. Tim. You sound amazing, Tim. Thank you for that audio.
I do you all the favor by staying muted. No, I'm hot off the plane from Louisville, Kentucky. I just got back from a 3-day seminar of a user group, our focus group for the software program that we're using. So highlights of the trip. I'm not a bourbon drinker, so can't share stories about that.
What?
So I just don't have a palate for liquor. I don't know what it is. I just can't quite seem to get on board. So we did get to go to Churchill Downs and have a small little
nice
tour. So I'm not a horse guy either. I'm not really much of a gambler, but it's quite impressive and large. I didn't realize that Churchill Downs is a mile-long track. Yeah. And they run it 1.25 miles. So we got to see where the mile marker was and then where the finish line was. We got to see the Twin Spires, and then walk around and look at a bunch of displays of really short guys.
You didn't place any $2 bets?
No, they had a thing where like down in the main atrium, they had like a horse game where you could they gave you like basically a betting book, with all the odds or whatever. And then they had video screens up, and then they gave you kind of fake money, and you could go up to the window and bet your life away with no harm, no foul and stuff like that. So that was interesting.
That's how they lure teens into a lifetime of the horrors of gambling addiction.
Well,
it's a starter's guide.
That's so funny that you said that, because that's part of the conversation that my boss and I were having as we were above looking down on the whole thing. How it seemed to be sort of a fast track to getting people on their way to gambling, get them excited about winning some fake money.
Yeah.
And then they let that transition to the real thing. So anyway, it was interesting. And we hung out in a hotel for 3 days. What do you want?
Oh, exciting.
By the way, aren't you supposed to have a mint julep there?
Yeah. That was the other thing that was quite popular there. And they literally had a market right across the street that you could go in and get one. But I steered clear.
Yeah. It is, that's smart. I mean, you're there for work, so maybe one or two. You have one, and next thing you know, you have two. Then it's three. Then it's four, and then they are wiping you off the grass there at Churchill Downs. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think on the first night, I think they did do some bourbon tasting or something like that.
I would have been all over that.
So I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing. Like, don't get me wrong, I drink. I just don't drink liquor. So.
That's all right. That's all right. And Charles, how's your week going?
It's going very well. Very busy. I will admit that one of my skills is I'm a juggler, so I can joke. In fact, I could go get the balls and do it for you right now. But I feel like I'm juggling a lot of balls this week. A little bit more than
there's a Steve Martin joke there somewhere.
Nothing to do with that, but it's a lot going on. We're very, very busy.
Yeah.
All good things, and it's just trying to keep them all moving in the air at the same time.
Yeah. Especially right now with everything going on. Paul, Mr. Australia, future Mr. Australia.
Oh no future anything. No, I'm okay. I'm starting to get back to my normal self.
Yeah,
Good.
After being flogged.
yeah.
Poked and prodded.
Did the knee surgery go well? Did you do it yet?
No, I ended up really sick with pneumonia. No.
Yeah.
I was in bed for like 4 days.
Sucks
All
getting old.
kinds of rubbish. It's got nothing to do with getting old, actually. Jeez.
Jeez, coming out
In the middle of this, I had my birthday.
We're the same age, Paul. We're the same age.
Yeah, all right. I did a couple of silly things in the garage, cutting something, and then I also found out that there was mold in the house, which affected my emphysema, and I almost lost my voice completely. But they were scanning me, doing this, doing that. They were chasing the big C, and I was glad that didn't turn up in my lungs. But they're still worried about my left lung. But we'll see what happens.
All right, Paul. I hate to do this to you. But I gotta ask. This question.
What?
All right. So don't get mad at me. What has it been like there in Australia for the Queen? Honestly.
It's been very strange, put it that way. A lot of the government still believes in the monarchy. I'm quite the opposite. But on the 22nd, they're actually having a national holiday for her, like for the burial. The top 10 people that have made a big difference over the last X amount of years here have been invited to her funeral. So
you're going,
right?
You're
not going. I'm going nowhere near it. Thank you very much. No way. But they're actually bringing people from the community that have actually done really good work here. They've been invited to the funeral. And the Prime Minister's flying to the funeral and an entourage.
I was just wondering, how Australia was dealing with it.
Well, it's very different here because some of the people that were a big fan of like Elizabeth, they don't like Charles.
Yeah.
They really don't like him. They don't trust him. And we'll just see what happens. But now we have to change all our money.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He needs to be on there.
It's quite funny because
you guys have beautiful money though.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. Us Americans are jealous of your money.
Well, okay,
not its value, just the money.
Okay. But all our money's plastic, but it's all colors.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Money.
But on the when they changed, they keep changing it every year. They'll put out another section. Like we've got people from Aboriginal backgrounds. We've got people that worked in different things. I don't have my glasses on at the moment, but it's all different colors.
Money. It's beautiful.
It's all different colors with artworks and things like that. All our coins. We've still got coins here, which is also very strange to me because we live in an electronic world. But all of the coins now have to be reminted that had the Queen on them. So now they're going to have Charles on there, which is going to be very strange at first. And we've also got a very big coin collecting community here and note collecting. Yeah. So, and also artworks, like anything that was here from the very early days that was Elizabeth, or when Elizabeth came out in the 70s to open the Opera House, and I was actually there. So all of those types of things and the photographs and the signatures and the different events, they're all become very, very valuable now overnight. Mm-hmm. It's quite strange. It's quite strange to see. Canada's very similar because they've got the Queen on some of their stuff as well still. But here in Australia, all our banknotes used to have Queen Elizabeth on it. All our coins still do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just strange.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
All right. Allison,
Hey,
how's your week going? And do you have a Queen story? No, I'm
to be
joking.
honest with you, I'm actually really disappointed because I thought Charles was going to juggle, and here I am waiting to see it.
Give him time. Give him time. I'll get him to do it. I'll get him.
I think that was metaphorical juggle, not like actually juggle. But yeah, things are good. Just working. Pretty much it. Working, band stuff.
Yeah, band mama.
Band mom.
Band mama.
And
Yeah, my son's in marching band and
oh, cool.
like 7 other bands. He plays the trumpet.
Timmy,
Yes.
why don't you say hello to our viewers, please?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Wednesday Night Live show. Let's go down the roster. I think we got a lot of the usual characters in here, so this will be nice. And thank you, everybody, for showing up. We got Tho from Berlin. We have Charles. We have a little bit of a wide-ranging audience. So we got people that are stateside and over on the other side of the water there. Liana, good to see you. Welcome to the show. I have to get through all the Thos and the Lianas. Hold on, bear with me. Daryl, good to see you. Daryl's back from last week. Daryl picked up vaping, and Daryl, you were saying it helped you with your COPD, I believe. Yeah. And then we've got Michael Redfern. Good to see you. Who else? We got Curtis Clemens in the house. Curtis is always here. We got Prof. Millicky. Good to see you, Prof. How you doing? And I think
there's that dude from LabWorks. He's around somewhere.
Yeah, no, Paul's in there as the troll. He's our resident troll. And I think
I snorted. Sorry.
I think that's it. But I wanted to, and I know he's probably not watching the show tonight, but there are people that are familiar with Rog Sinkerd, and I just wanted to extend my heartfelt concerns for his situation at home. And I know he said he was going to be taking a step away for a little while. He got hit with some pretty heavy stuff this morning. So if anybody knows Rog, let him know. The people at the Wednesday Night Live show were thinking about him, and we've got him in our thoughts. Absolutely.
Nice. Yes. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into it with Charles.
Hello to Mallory.
Hello.
Oh, Mallory. I didn't see Mallory. I must have zipped right by her because she's so sneaky.
You forgot Mallory.
I didn't see a Mallory.
You get that.
Okay, well, that's all right. I probably just got blocked on Twitch.
Well, let's start with some questions for Charles, and just to get started, can kind of give us a little bit of a brief history of your maybe not so far back your whole education, but how you got your education and how you got involved in this.
Well, as you could tell, it's kind of a long, complicated story, and I don't even understand it myself. But
you went into the wrong room, right? Your freshman year.
Yeah. At one point, I wanted to be a medical doctor, but I'm not. So I got a PhD in developmental neurobiology, which means I studied how the brain develops, which turns out to be actually pretty relevant to some of the things that we talk about with nicotine. And I decided I didn't want to continue. In fact, I actually wanted to become a science journalist. That was my goal. So I took a fellowship. I worked on the Hill for a while in the U.S. That's, working for Congress. And then I got sucked into the bureaucracy in the U.S. government and worked for the U.S. Department of Health. Ended up in India, as you heard. Actually drove Tony Fauci around New Delhi in my car when he was there for the immunology conference. Did interesting things there. And then worked in philanthropy, worked for the World Health Organization, just, bounced around. And nobody wanted me for, more than 5 years. And but frankly, I always took the advice of my uncle, who said, never stay anywhere for more than 5 years, and move on, do something different, do something new. And about, I guess it was 4 years ago, one of the people I had worked with at the Rockefeller Foundation, a guy named Derek Yacht, I was reading in the news had just started a new foundation, which turns out to be a very controversial foundation. If you want, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
But, so I called up Derek and I said, "What the hell is that? And what are you doing?" And he explained it to me. And in a few weeks, I was working for the foundation. And I knew nothing, absolutely nothing about tobacco control, because everything I had done before was about, well, it was global health stuff. So it was HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, dengue, rabies, nutrition, child health, early childhood development, which is, brain development. And so here I was moving from infectious disease to a behavior that leads to not to infectious disease, but to non-communicable disease. So cancer, heart disease, lung disease. It was a very steep learning curve, but that's why it's fun.
Yeah.
And it turns out to be what I think is the most controversial field in public health today, which for me, that's somehow that gets me up in the morning.
Yeah. Allie,
By the way,
Yeah,
I should
yeah.
say I'm now the executive director of INCO, which is a nonprofit organization.
I missed one. I said I missed one.
I should really just give a shout out to INCO.
Nice.
So this is 37 member organizations all over the world. We're growing fastest in Latin America and Africa. And we support the rights of 112 million people around the world who use safer nicotine to avoid toxic forms of tobacco.
Right.
Sorry, if I had to.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
that is awesome.
Okay, so I have a question based on what you just said before I start my questions. So you
Yeah.
said you change what you do every 5 years, and you said you met Derek 4 years ago. So like in a
Yeah.
year, you're not leaving us, right?
No,
No.
I really love INCO, and I truly love this field. And I remember something. So when I was in India, the former health commissioner of New York was there working for the Department of Health. His name is Tom Frieden. Some of you may know the name, but Tom was there, and he's a good guy. And I asked him why he had come, and he later became the director of the CDC. But so why did you come to India, Tom? He said, well, and he was working on tuberculosis. He said, if I can tilt the needle just 1 degree here in India, I will have saved more lives than I could save in my entire lifetime working as the health commissioner in New York. And it always stuck in my head. So like if we can tilt the needle just a tiny bit, given the death toll from smoking and other toxic forms of tobacco, to me, this is about saving lives.
I got a quick question for you now because you brought up India. Are you shocked by what took place in India with vaping?
No, I'm saddened by it. I'm saddened to know the white paper that came out of the Indian Council of Medical Research was a pivotal document in that Stan Glantz was one of the advisors on that paper. It was very cherry picked. By the way, this photograph of Mahatma Gandhi it's a gift to me from the Director General of the Indian Council of Medical Research, speaking of which, and it's one of my most cherished possessions. By the way, if you can't see it, he's looking into a microscope.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think it's a pretty famous picture, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's actually supposedly looking at a sample of his own blood. And
Let me see if I can. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Now we can see it. There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
It was taken while he was in prison.
Oh, wow.
When would it be? 1943 or something. Imprisoned by the British. And
I like how you emphasize the British.
one of those Commonwealth countries.
Yeah.
But so, things are funny. I mean, in India, it's land of contradictions.
Yeah. Allison.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh wait, Tim, do you have a question?
Well,
before Allison-
I wanted Charles to back up a minute because he brought up the idea that the organization that he's working for, though, that he got involved with, was highly controversial. So I'd like to understand the parameters around why you say it's so controversial.
Well, that's a softball question. So, INCO was founded in 2016, 2 years before that controversial foundation. They are our primary source, the primary source of funding for the Secretariat of INCO. But that funding does not go to our board. It does not go to our members. So it's really just kind of keeping the lights on with a secretariat that supports the members. But all of our decisions, all of our strategy, everything we do is driven by our board and our member organizations. We just held our General Assembly in June in Warsaw. But the foundation is obviously controversial because it receives money from a big tobacco company. Now, we're not comfortable with that. I will say that very straight up.
Yeah.
But there is no other source of funding, and we're looking for more. Believe me, if I could find a high net worth individual who has lost a loved one to smoking or who has switched from smoking to a safer nicotine alternative, I would chat him or her up big time.
Right.
I have reached out to many such people. And at the same time, the foundation, there are so many firewalls between that tobacco company and the foundation, and then there are more firewalls between the foundation and us and me, and then sometimes I just think some of these journalists or people from Bath, UK, everybody know Bath, UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would just invite them to come sit in with us, see what we do. Like the whole point is we're transparent about what we do, and the organizations that are receiving money from Mike Bloomberg are not.
Right.
Mike Bloomberg is a U.S. billionaire who is a known harm reduction denier. You could say it's like an anti-vaxxer or climate change denier.
Right.
But every organization that receives any of the $152 million we spend every year on this stuff, they're like the angels. They think they're the angels, but they don't declare that as a conflict of interest when it's obviously a conflict of interest.
Sure. So follow-up question to that. I'm hearing myself twice. I don't know why. Follow-up question to that then. So would you say when you're reaching out to those other sources for funding that might fall outside the tobacco industry, do you find that connection back to the tobacco industry is something that gives them reason for a pause to donate?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just, I think the main thing is that, wealthy people are just like anybody else. They're not informed about this topic for the most part. They have all the hangups that everybody in the general public does based on decades and decades of misinformation. And so the hangups about nicotine, hangups about tobacco, hangups. And so it's hard to break through those barriers.
Yeah. I figured as much. I kind of not that people with money can't be open-minded, but I guess that source of money can come from older people, more set in their ways, older wealthy people, as well as entrepreneurs, people that have gotten wealthy at much younger ages, and we
need a Bitcoin billionaire.
There we go.
Some of those 20-something kids. They would get it. They would understand it.
Yeah.
They just don't know that this is actually a battle. There's a real battle going on right now.
Yeah. Well, people must be hesitant to donate as well because of the stigma that goes along with it now that there's such a negative attitude towards.
Yeah.
If you're worth $100 million, you don't really care about that.
Yeah, that's true.
They want ROI. That's what they're looking for. They want ROI on that investment, or at least know that the money's going towards something that is, that's beneficial in some way. They don't want to lose.
Right. So I would say, so a vape company that's where you could put ROI, get ROI, I suppose, because they're doing good and doing well, trying to do well at the same time. We're not. We're just trying to do good.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be? Go ahead.
We have no, profit margin, so we're just there's no return on the investment other than you just maybe helped some people
Right.
not die.
Too bad we get the pushback, because I was going to say, wouldn't that be cool if somehow we could invent something to end up on Shark Tank and get one of those guys to
Shark
invest in-
Tank.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there are a whole bunch of those things. Like there's something called the Investors Roundtable that happens up in Boston, and you can go make a pitch if you are a social enterprise. If you're a social enterprise that is selling a service or a product, so you're making a profit.
Lucrative.
But the purpose is not to get rich. Really, it's to improve the world.
Mhm.
There are people who do that, and God bless them.
Yeah.
And there are
Right.
even stupid people who do what I do.
Well, all right, Allie, it's all you. Sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine. Okay, so first off, I want to discuss your new article for Filter. Great job, by the way. It's an awesome article. Why aren't we celebrating the end of teenage smoking? I personally have to agree with you here. As somebody who was 15 years old, not only smoking at high school, but actually smoking in the same area as the teachers, sometimes even bumming a lighter off of my art teacher, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm honestly shocked that the youth smoking rate declining so drastically is not the focus of public health instead of the vaping epidemic. And I know that you in your article said, why isn't the FDA saying that the epidemic is over? Based on the numbers, that's what they should be doing. And I just was wondering, do you think that's something that I can't even say it without laughing. Do you think that's something that we'll ever hear from the FDA? Or do you think that they will keep continuing to use these numbers to push that anti-vaping, anti-flavors narrative?
Yeah, the whole thing's a puzzle to me. And just to summarize very briefly, in the United States, U.S. high school smoking was about 25% back in the 70s, 20% in the 80s. 27% actually in the 90s. It got even higher, possibly because of grunge rock.
Mm-hmm.
And then it dropped. It dropped to 22.5% in 2001. Now, there is an issue I didn't raise in the article, which is, I think, really interesting. Maybe I should have, but there were space limitations.
Mm-hmm.
In 1999, everybody was setting millennium goals, if you can remember that time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them were 2020 goals, because you have 2020 hindsight. It sounded good. So, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services set a goal for high school cigarette smoking to drop from 28%, which is what it was in 99. Wow. 1999 was 28%. That would drop to 16% by the year 2020. So that's exclusive smoking. Exclusive smoking is now 0.5%.
Wow.
That's not including dual use. Dual use,
right,
gets it up to 1.9%. It's pretty stunning. And you have to understand, as those kids age, since most smokers start in their teens, they're going to become young adults, and then they become middle-aged, and then they become old like me.
Like Paul.
And the age of smoking is over in the United States. It's done. And what is it, like 34% of adults are in Germany are smoking. 26% of French people are smoking. So they're on a different trajectory.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., smoking is done.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you just wait long enough. And then the whole thing is, well, okay, nicotine vaping, right? So that's got everybody's knickers in a twist.
Yeah, I noticed even with like my cousins in Italy, which are about the same age as my boys, which are in their late 20s, early 30s, they're not smokers. They don't want nothing to do with it. They don't like the smell. They don't like anything to do it. But yeah, it's kind of weird, because last time I went over there, none of them were smoking. And when I went there as a teenager, I was getting cigarettes from my cousins that were like 12 years old. They're like, "Hey, you want a cigarette?" I'm like, "No."
Well, would you say that those trajectories are off just due to potentially just sort of cultural differences in the countries themselves? I mean, because mentally, I would think, like in a place like India or a place like France or a place like, over in places in Europe, that it just seems like cigarettes just seem to be part of the natural culture of life. I don't know, like when I was in the UK, it just seemed like everybody had a little package of filters and their own roll your own tobacco and and it just seemed like that was very common. And then you compare that to my trip to Louisville, and of course, there's always the mad rush at the lunch, at the morning break in between classes. And I was actually shocked. This was probably the first time that I've been around a large conglomerate of people where I felt like the majority of people outside that were in the smoking area were vapors, and they kind of seemed to preside in number over the people that were smoking. So I was just curious, do you see that as a cultural sort of phenomena?
Yeah, I mean, very much. Every country seems to be on its own. I used the word trajectory before, but the cigarette smoking rates in India as a rate, not the absolute numbers, but the rate is actually relatively low. I think it's like 10%. But 10% of 1 point whatever billion people is a lot of people. And Indians are more likely to use various kinds of smokeless tobacco, many of which are really quite toxic. Pan and gutka are the ones that are most often mentioned, but there's a whole range of them. And there's higher smoking rates in most of Europe, except for Sweden, of course.
Right.
For whatever reason, I don't know if anybody completely comprehends these differences. But if I'm a tobacco control researcher, if you give me $5 million, I'll do research on that.
Yeah,
sure.
Try to figure out what the answer is. And
what did you say the rate was in the U.S. right now?
It's 12.5%.
And of that 12.5%, I don't know if someone
basically zero.
Yeah, I don't know if that breaks it down to where they are. I hate using it, but like where these families are financially at, and
this is something like
is it a whole?
Nobody talks about this. If I understand where you were going.
Yeah. I'm trying to, but
the remaining smokers are those least able and least willing to quit, right? But they are by and large either among our lowest income groups, people living with mental health issues, especially neurodiversity issues, ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, autism, adults with those, or people in the LGBTQ community, or people in Native American tribes, so indigenous peoples. It's basically any population that you can think of that is we would consider vulnerable and stressed,
right,
tend to smoke at higher rates than the rest of than the general population, the neurotypical population, if you're not with a mental health problem, and or wealthier people. And one of the issues I think is really interesting is the people making all these decisions about tobacco control now tend to be highly educated and middle to upper middle class people, and they don't know anyone who smokes.
Yeah.
So they don't see it. But there's 31 million smokers in the United States, and how many in Australia, Paul? It's a small population.
The current figures are around 2.1 million smokers here, but the kicker is now that the smoking rate is actually rising. The rate that they're showing is around 12% or 12.5% here, but the actual rate is around 16%. And when you look at the indigenous population and this also then goes out to the Pacific regions, say New Zealand, Fiji, Thailand, Malaysia, all through the Pacific. We're getting smoking rates now in the indigenous and lower socioeconomic of 30 and 40% respectively.
Wow.
But they're not publicizing this. The actual smoking rate here is 16%, but they're lying. There's 4% there that they're not talking about right now.
Is that because it's not being counted because it's counterfeit cigarettes and smuggled cigarettes?
The amount of illegal tobacco and the amount of illegal cigarettes coming into this country is mind-boggling because of the cost. When you consider a regular everyday packet now has just hit $35 to $37 for a packet of 20.
That's crazy, man. Jesus Christ.
And you have illegal tobacco now being sold under the counter. A packet of 20 from China will cost you about $21. Okay? And they cannot stop the imports. We effectively, we're an island. Okay? You have so many ports of entry, it's not funny.
Yeah.
And the other thing now is tobacco is being backyard grown again, like it used to be back in the day. And that is now
like growing weed, right?
Oh, hello. You know. But okay, John, the thing is with a tobacco plant, it takes 11 months to mature from growth, from planting to maturity. No, I don't need the hair. I don't have the hair. And then, he's got the hair. And then from that, the amount of chop that's turning up now, as we call it here in Australia, under the counter, it's mind-boggling. So here's the comparison. 50 grams of regulated tobacco, rolling tobacco, is $137 to $153 per 50 grams. Okay? 50 grams of chop is $50. It's $1 a gram.
Yeah.
There's your mathematics on it.
Yeah.
But then the thing that pushes this market also is the stupidity with the prescription model that was introduced last year, October 1, for vaping products. So it's lose-lose situation across the board here, and the mismanagement of public health, or the how would we put it, uneducated documentation being put out into the public eye. We have health ministers at the federal level completely lying through their teeth and coming out with rhetoric that we were reading 3 and 4 years, 5 years ago, even coming out of the United States, is now being put out as public policy to school children. And I can't get my head around this anymore. It's doing my head in. Stress. You've got no idea. You see some of the rhetoric that's coming out into documentation and the education programs. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Hard.
God bless the Queen. Go ahead. I had to mess with it.
Okay. So the youth usage numbers have dropped. Do you think that number will go back up once kids are fully back in school this year?
Yeah. So if we just talk about vaping, teen vaping, so teen nicotine vaping, it started to creep up in the United States in 2012, and by 2014 it had hit 13.4%, which is higher than it is now.
Right.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? And it went up to 16% in 2015, which is coincidentally when Juul launched. Then U.S. high school nicotine vaping dropped about 30%. It goes back down. Who knows why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's been able to explain that to me. I don't know why. It drops down to about 11% and stays low for 2 years after Juul launched. So 2016, 2017, and then it started to creep up in 2018. So there's a 2-year blip from 2018 to 2020 where it goes up and then it comes way back down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a blip. So it looks very similar to what happened with teen smoking in the 90s, because that was creeping along and then it suddenly skyrocketed in the mid 90s. But by the turn of the millennium, it was back down to around 22% again. Who knows why these things happen?
Yeah.
Kids have fads. When I was in middle school and high school, we had fads. There was a skateboard fad. There was a marbles fad. There were these little plastic things that we traded fad. There were like fads come and go. And it's not necessarily a sign that this is a highly addictive substance. And I think it's going to come down. So what happened was it came down 29% between 2019 and 2020. So in the year just before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then according to, this is all CDC National Youth Tobacco Survey data,
Right.
dropped another 42% during the pandemic, up to 2021. And by the way, I'm super pissed off at our agencies because when in the UK and Europe, when they do these kind of surveys, the data gets released within 3 months.
Yeah.
In our country, in the United States, it gets released 1 to 2 years later. And this is so the researchers involved don't get scooped. So they have first dibs on the data so they can get their publications out. This is not ethical.
Right.
This is publicly funded research. It is not right. Anyway, so we don't know what happened in 2022. The kids are going back to school. I would, but this is just like my guess. I would guess it might go up a little bit. Who knows? But it might not, because maybe the fad is just over. Maybe it's, and then they'd rather go, vape THC or smoke pot or drink alcohol, which they do in much larger numbers.
Right.
Right.
Do you think like T21 had anything to do with that? Do you think that it's harder for them to get, and so kids just get bored and they're like, I can't get it as easily?
It might. It might. So that's part of the problem is every time we impose these policies, it's like this vast clinical trial with no informed consent on an enormous population. And when you're changing 5 variables like T21, flavors, whatever, all at the same time, you don't know what was the thing that caused anything.
Right.
But that's where we are. So T21, it was one of the things that obviously we in the harm reduction community thought was a pretty boneheaded idea for any kid who was 18 years old, an adult who was a smoker, to deny them a safer alternative. On the other hand, it wasn't the thing that we chose. What's the expression? It wasn't the cross we chose to die on.
We didn't hang our hat on that. We weren't trying to. Well, I mean, I think we know everything's going to be a compromise when it comes to dealing with, these agencies. Nothing's going to be the way we want it to be. So I feel like we're like, okay, if we give this, then maybe we'll keep that.
Yeah, but then they want more. They just keep wanting more, as we have all learned.
Yeah.
It's
the first thing my dad. It's the first thing my dad taught me: never take a decrease in salary ever. And a company will always promise you, we'll give it back to you. We promise we'll give it back to you, but the company's hurting. We're gonna have to take $1 away from everybody. And my dad always says, always say no, or go find yourself another job, because they'll never give you that money back. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, when I look at why I think there might have been spikes over a period of time, I'm sure there's a billion different variables, but I feel like maybe some of the earlier variables might just simply be, like Charles said, it's a fad, right? It's the newest thing. It with these new devices, they could be more highly concealed. It didn't really leave much of a trace. And then, ultimately, that starts to get boring. And then maybe some of those other spikes are caused by it's collateral damage, right? Because I felt like for a while, once the adults started getting attacked for being vapors in general, because of the kids, right? It's always because of the kids. We have to suffer the consequence of that. You know, it seemed like we were kind of, I wouldn't say on a warpath, but we were kind of like these heat-seeking missiles that were always like looking for the kid that was vaping to kind of call them out and be like, "You're ruining it for us," you know. And then they do that, and then they start doing it more because we're pissed off that, you know, we're mad at them for doing it, so we goad them. And then I feel like maybe one of the other reasons why it might have spiked, and this is just my opinion, is that with all of the sort of forbidden fruit advertising that's done by the antis and the magazines and these campaigns that are out there to try to reduce teen vaping or youth vaping, they see it as some taboo thing now. And it's like, oh, well, we got to have that then. If they're telling us it's bad, it's certainly something we should be trying.
Yeah, that's how I felt when DARE came into my school. I was like, I just learned about a bunch of shit I had no idea even existed. Like, you just opened my eyes to a whole world I didn't really even know about.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, that's a plausible argument. It is exactly what happened with the DARE campaign, Just Say No to Drugs stuff in the 90s. And millions and millions, and including federal dollars, were spent on the DARE campaign, and it went into thousands of high schools. And basically, it told the kids, like, here are all your drug options.
And don't do these.
Don't do them, but all your friends are doing them. And so, you know, go off and have a good time. And so that's basically, I think a lot of the school-based anti-vape programs have just repeated that mistake. But I can't prove it.
I like your first prediction, grunge music. Always blame the grunge music.
Well, it raises another question for me. So, and maybe Charles, since he tends to get into the numbers weeds and stuff like that. But in terms of vaping in general and in the school system, do you see any kind of a trend going on with kids in the sense that they've now sort of found their way around some of the back channels? And the only reason why I'm a little miffed by the number and not the actual number, but what I'm saying is the argument number is that, you know, a lot of kids are getting it not through the standard channels that we're normally used to seeing, but we also see this big movement by what appears to be a large conglomerate of kids in the high school educational system that are effectively opining and lobbying for the anti-vape organization. So they put them in front of Congress and they read their little letter, you know, about, you know, how
they're paid and they get scholarships. That's
a
pretty tiny number of kids. I am not in touch with the Ute.
Right.
The Utes.
The two Utes.
My cousin Vinny. Not, you know, my Ute are 19 and 22 now, but they were in high school not very long ago. So I mean, I was able to talk with them about what was going on. Was it were they seeing?
Did either one of those two smoke? Just curious.
Neither smoked. The younger boy, I shouldn't be disclosing this. The younger boy was caught for a while smoking cannabis. My attitude was, you know, I'm your dad. I don't approve of it. What you do is your choice. But I just want you to know I don't approve of that. I left all of these things. I left in that way. The older boy tried vaping for a while and then decided he didn't like it or it was too expensive and he quit. So I'm not convinced by the highly addictive arguments. If you look at all the research on nicotine's dependence forming characteristics, it's a pretty mixed bag.
Yeah,
it's not what is claimed.
So is there any particular correlation in the extreme drop in numbers of youth smoking? And the reason why I'm asking is there any potential correlation to vaping in general? They've gone from smoking to vaping. Obviously, there's not much of a gateway theory to be proven here, right? Because the whole idea was you know, if they start vaping, they're going to start smoking. And maybe there was a handful that probably maybe tried it because of the other thing. But are you seeing any correlation with some of the consistency in the low number of vapors because they wanted to move from smoking to vaping as an alternative?
Well, cross-sectional surveys show that there's a gateway effect. So the question becomes, are you going to believe that what is actually an association with no proof of causation, or are you going to believe your own lying eyes when teen smoking has just dropped 90%? And not only that, but high school smoking drops 90%, but among all U.S. adults, the age group with the steepest rate of smoking decline is young adults, followed closely by those aged 25 to 34. This looks like product substitution to me. I don't know how anyone. This is like an emperor's clothes thing. I don't know how any sensible, rational being can look at what's happened over the past 10 years and still say there's a gateway effect. But they do. They continue to say it because that's part of the narrative that they have to push to demonize.
Until they leave and go to Philip Morris, and then they say exactly what you just said.
The fact is, but U.S. teen smoking just dropped 90%. The number of frequent smokers, which is 20 or more days, per month, is 0.38% now. It's nil. It's nothing. It's dead. And to say that there's a gateway effect after 10 years of e-cigarettes being around is insane. But they continue to do it. I literally see it every day. So how is this happening? But it is. So this is product substitution, like digital cameras and film cameras, electric cars and internal combustion cars. And now we're stepping in to increase the taxes on electric cars in order to reduce fossil fuel use. That's the logic that we're following right now.
Right.
Do other countries? I was considering why maybe they don't change our numbers as frequent as often, is they can use those numbers to show to other countries that this is what's happening in the U.S. This is what could happen here if we don't get control of it and get rid of vaping, and use our numbers to show other countries why they need to get rid of vaping.
It's not that intelligent a plot.
Right.
There is a system that's been in place for decades in the United States. We do these surveys, and the government doesn't release the data, where they'll release some dribbles, top line findings, notes from the field. If you've ever seen that from CDC, which is like give you a little tidbit, but they're holding on to the data because they made an agreement with the researchers who conducted the survey that they would get first dibs on publications. That's the way it works.
Okay.
Definitely not the way it should work, but definitely.
Yeah.
So as these numbers change and it consistently is showing that this is no epidemic, not that it ever was, but how do you think they're going to support this narrative that they've created now if the numbers no longer support the statements that they're saying? Or do you think they'll find another way?
Well, you've heard me say before, I think the whole thing is a house of cards.
Yeah.
And the cards are being pulled out, like, the harms of nicotine, it's not really, and the vaping epidemic is one they're going to cling to for a long time. So as you all know, if you're on social media as often as I probably should not be, that
he's not here. He's really not here. It's a puppet. It's a puppet.
Organizations that are pushing the other narrative, the alternate narrative, they're clinging to the 2019 data. If they admit that teen vaping has decreased in the United States, they'll say it's down somewhat. 60% in 2 years is not somewhat.
Yeah, no,
but then they'll blame it on the epidemic.
Just a little bit. Yeah, they'll blame it on the epidemic. And
so now it's going to increase, or it might increase now that kids are going back to school. Who knows? Might keep going down. I don't know.
I mean, they might also change the question to, have you looked at a vape in the last 30 days instead of actually vaping?
The whole narrative is completely undermined by, just take a look at the Truth Initiative, which was created 20 years ago with $1 billion endowment as an independent nonprofit foundation to reduce teen smoking. what are they going to do now? Because teen
They're out of a
smoking
job.
is almost zero. So then you get mission creep, and you begin to find other demons. And I've seen them starting to talk about opioids, which is a problem. That's a serious
That
problem.
That is a
Huge
problem. Yeah.
Much bigger problem than vaping.
Yes.
But then, obviously they took it upon themselves to take. Basically, they believed what Matt Myers told them, and that vaping was the a curse from God or something.
Yeah.
And put all of their energies into that. So there's a shift because they have to justify their existence. You're running these organizations. You have staff salaries to pay. You have to keep getting the grants come in from Mike Bloomberg or the Truth Initiative, or from the research funding agencies if you're doing research, or from the National Heart, whatever.
Well, that too, and it's already in their name. Like, it's too hard to switch to something else.
Yeah.
Tobacco-free kids, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're kind of
well. So you have to redefine e-cigarettes and call them tobacco, and then
right
on we go. Nicotine pouches are tobacco.
Yep.
Right?
Synthetic nicotine is also tobacco. Nothing to do with tobacco whatsoever.
It's bonkers. It's all utterly bonkers. I have some faith that things will turn around, but I don't believe that's going to happen quickly. People will come to their senses. They will start to realize that vapors are not dying. Not even not dying in droves. They're not dying at all.
Yeah, I haven't heard of anyone dying yet.
Yeah. Well, the reward, right? You guys know this?
What?
I didn't hear you.
So there is a reward, cash money.
Oh yeah.
And it's $3,700 for anyone who can provide verified proof of one confirmed death ever caused in the past 20 years of use among 82 million adult nicotine vapors worldwide from inhaling nicotine vapor. It's a simple app. Just show us one. And honestly, if this is all kind of like grassroots, like everybody, a lot of people put in like $100.
Yeah, I threw in money on it.
Yeah.
And if somebody came up with one, I would be delighted.
Yeah.
Because there would be one death, and out of 20 years,
you can actually start a poll.
This would literally prove that this is the safest consumer product ever invented.
Yeah, that's true too. You can look at it that way. Yeah.
And it cause more deaths than that.
Yeah. I mean, but I feel like that the general public at large. I mean, obviously, I think the talking heads know this information just as much as we do, but the public in general seems to not. They think otherwise. They think that people have died from it, or people have gotten these horrible byproduct, conditions, the popcorn lung and all that other stuff. And they seem to be so easily swayed into thinking that is the case. So, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to call them conspiracy theories, but what do you is it that they need to continue this fight to die on this hill for these people who are effectively pushing this monetary narrative? What is their end goal? Because we could go 25 years, we could go 30 years, we could go 40 years and never see one death. We could see consistent low rates of teen vaping or youth vaping and stuff like that. Like, what are they really aiming at? Because I think the common argument would be, oh, well, the reason why they want to get rid of vaping is so that tobacco can survive, because that's whose pockets are getting chipped away at, right? It's Philip Morris and it's Altria and it's all these big tobacco companies. They're losing billions of dollars to the vaping industry, and
the states are losing money that a lot of them borrowed against.
Right, and I like the meme I shared a month and a half ago or something like that on Twitter, where it said it was a doctor in front of his class, and it said first day of medical class or something, and it said a patient cured is a customer lost. And so I'm wondering, in your opinion, what do you see what is their end game here? I mean, if they can't, because essentially they can't continue to live by antiquated numbers from 3, 4, 5 years ago, that they just can't hold the weight.
Yeah, Tim likes to ask about 10-minute questions, so
Well,
I'm glad you're patient there,
they're
Charles.
informed questions.
This is where I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories. I don't think they're that smart. I don't think that they are that Machiavellian. I don't think that they have some grand scheme. Now, I can guarantee you that between Tobacco Free Kids and some other organizations, they're running a war room, and they're pushing, certain media narratives on a daily and weekly basis. You can see that happening. That's orchestrated, and it's very clever, and it's some of it's pretty powerful. And they have used basically all of the most effective prohibitionist memes you can think of. Like, just think of the kids and just switching one addiction for another, and gateway effect and all this stuff. Those are prohibitionist memes. So they're very clever about that. But in terms of, like, I don't think that they really understand the use the word trajectory here again, the trajectory they're on. Because 5 years time, 10 years time, what's actually happening is the scientific community, I have to say this very carefully, experts disagree, right? Like that's ironic, because 40 years ago, that's what the tobacco industry tried to convince the public, that, their whole tactic was very clever. The tobacco industry's tactic 40 years ago was, when they realized we don't have to tell people cigarettes are safe, we just have to convince people experts disagree. But the fact is, the experts actually do disagree now. Climate change, no, it's 98% to 2%. That's not a disagreement. That's a vast preponderance of expertise on one side. In the case of tobacco control, this thing is shifting, and I've seen it happening just in the past 4 years. And this is the good news. Everybody should know this, that the people, a lot of the people that were on the on the precautionary principle side of the fence, like, we don't want anything new. Anything new is bad. We have to study it for 20 more years. Some of them have shifted, and they're sitting on the fence now. And some of the people who, the experts who were on the fence, are shifting onto the side of harm reduction. It's just the public hasn't caught up with this, and very definitely the journalists haven't caught on to that yet. And 15 past presidents of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco can publish an article toward the end of last year saying, hey, guys, we've looked at the evidence. These things are safer. The whole teen use thing is being blown out of proportion. That's what their article said. They all agreed. They're all veterans of the war against big tobacco. The SRNT is the world's top. It's the premier professional society in the field of tobacco control. And not one media outlet in the United States reported on that article, despite that they put out a press release, that they put out little videos. Ken Warner was on a great video. You go back and look at it. And oh, by the way, so Allie asked me about the article in Filter that just was published a day or two ago by yours truly. But I sent the original draft of that to every media source you can think of, every print media and every online media source you can think of. The Huffington Post, Vice, Slate, and the New York Times, Washington Post, everywhere. And it was rejected everywhere. And every time I sent it out, it included the CDC Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report with the hyperlinks to the actual numbers, to the data, so they could fact check me. Mm-hmm. So there was absolutely no way that what I was saying was not correct. But the conclusions I was reaching, which is like, there are fewer teens using nicotine now than at any time in the past half century.
Yeah.
That's just something they didn't want to hear, I guess. So it went to Filter, and which is a great magazine. But my original purpose was to try to get it outside of our echo chamber and for people in the harm reduction space. Great space. We can learn so much from people in the drug harm reduction field too, because they do good work there too. But I have received some feedback from people in the tobacco control community saying, "Oh, that was a great article, but it should have been published in, the New York Times or somewhere." Sorry, I tried it. They won't publish it.
Yeah.
So
and why do you think that is? Do you have an idea or
no? No, that's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you get into conspiracy theories, the Bloomberg Philanthropies has had a journalist training program for years in tobacco control. So they've been training journalists in their dogma for years. And I believe this is not a small number of journalists. And you might wonder whether some journalists are literally in their pocket. If you look at some of the fossil fuel industry propaganda about wind farms, wind farms kill birds. That was a whole propaganda meme 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Funded by certain people in the fossil fuel industry. They were just paying the journalists to put those articles out. So that happens.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's happening here.
Well, we just recently had one published in South Carolina. South Carolina is obsessed with vaping, and we're the 8th ranked state. And so obviously got annoyed, and then reached out to the person and was like, "Look, I'm a local. I work for the biggest company in South Carolina. I would love to actually have a conversation with you." And then I looked further into it, and I'm like, "This data is from 2019. Why are they writing this now?"
Right. And so here's the data from 2020. And here's the data from 2021.
Right. Oh, I overloaded. I said, if you'd like some up-to-date data, taking another look at your article, here is what you missed.
Right. But that's scary. So that there is a whole narrative. They're following a dogma. And if somebody's, violating that, we do need to learn, we need to learn from how to deprogram people who are in a cult.
Yeah. By any chance, did you send that article to Rolling Stone?
I sent it to Mother Jones. I don't think I sent it to Rolling Stone.
I think you should send it there.
That would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
So Mark Gunther, he did his piece on I can't remember which one it was. Was it the one?
There's been a couple pieces written in there about vaping.
But one of them, it was published in a smaller online journal, and then it got picked up by Mother Jones. So I thought, okay, they might be more receptive. So that can happen if anybody sees it. It's super scary, because what I'm saying is,
I can't get a journalist on this show. I've tried over and over and over again. I can't get a journalist on this show. I always get turned down. And they've written, actually, I take that back. Jim's the first one. Jim McDonald's the first one. The first and only one.
And he's super smart. And he's one of the people I can always count on to correct me if I make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I love that. I wish more people on the other side of this debate had the same scruples.
No, they just block you when they get annoyed with what you're saying.
They block me or accuse me of working for Big Tobacco.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Charles.
There are a bunch of other journalists we can have an offline conversation that you could try to get. But Paul, down in Oz.
My question to you is, why do you think the Australian government only used studies, and this refers to the report that Banks put out? Why do you think they only referred to the studies from 2014, 2015 and 2016 to make their case when this came forward? Yet one of the studies they used was actually retracted, and it was a glance study that was put into this report and then removed from the report before it was given, just before the prescription model got put into play.
It's just so clear in those cases. The same is true of the white paper that came out of the Indian Council of Medical Research that led to their ban. It's so clear that they already know what the conclusion is. So then they're just assembling the data that conforms to that conclusion. And whether that's because they think this is an evil plot by big tobacco. I mean, a lot of people truly believe that. And the World Health Organization literally says any mention of harm reduction in tobacco control is industry interference, full stop, right? So that there are people in the Church of Tobacco Control who are they're believers. I am fascinated. I mean, I think you're raising let me segue from that question, because why did the UK go the direction it went? And New Zealand went the direction it went, and Australia went the direction it went. And the US went 5 different directions. And that's fascinating. Some health historian is going to make a career out of this stuff, because there are really interesting questions to ask there. And my belief is that ultimately a lot of the directions, the trajectories of these different countries in their policies are driven by powerful local individuals who are in positions of authority. And it went one direction in the UK. It went completely the opposite direction in Australia. I don't know.
The very interesting part about it is that when Australia became a signatory to the FCTC, and we're a ratified member of that hoo-ha, and it's not fit for purpose anymore, by the way. FCTC is completely out of control, and what we're seeing here in Australia now is a campaign that it takes part from each part from around the world and then melds it together into this ball of plasticine that is molded. No, that's molded the way they want to see it on the day.
Yeah.
And we're also now, and I brought this up on a show that I was on a few months ago, that we're now also being geo-blocked by our government of actually getting our hands on data sets. This is now happening, where the curtain is coming down and the control is getting worse and worse and worse. People that know how to circumvent these issues, we're still getting our hands on data sets. Now, I'm a big proponent of tobacco companies putting their cards on the table and sharing their research. I don't care, okay? Because they've got the money to do the research. They can do it time and time again. They can replicate these studies. Yet we've got a study that was put out here of 23 liquids or 30 liquids. It was done by a .org, which is part of the Children's Cancer Foundation, who was backed up by dark money, that went to the TGA and said, well, this is all bad. We found formaldehyde in every single one. But when you actually look at the testing protocol, I looked at it and I said, you guys are crazy. Since when can you draw 10 seconds on said device at a certain temperature, certain wire, certain cotton? Really? Where are you getting these lungs from? They don't exist. We've pulled their pants down at every turn. And when we speak out about it here in Australia, we get slapped on the wrist or we get fined. And the fines that are associated now with vaping products are out of control. Like a company that I used to work for got slapped on the wrist for 78,000. Another company that I had a dealing with got slapped with 96,000. I've got 2 other friends that are now being dragged to federal court. And I got a phone call stating that I've still got a freezer full of nicotine in my garage. I went, really? You guys are out of control. Where's this information coming from? I was told, actually, to be very careful what I say on certain shows because I'm being watched. And I said, I don't care anymore. Come at me. I've got a law firm that I'm willing to pull your pants down. I'm over it. We're under such pressure here now in Australia because of this prescription model, and the black market for disposables is out of control. And when I say out of control, I mean it's out of control now. They caused it where industry never got asked a seat at the table when they were putting this policy together. And they're blaming us for it. Why? Why? Makes no sense.
Yeah, Inco is producing just now a discussion paper on disposables, and you can imagine that's a very controversial topic for us. About half of our members hate them, and half of them say, "Well, no, they help some people quit smoking." I think our conclusion is that the whole fiasco, the whole, as one of my colleagues says, the Pandora's box of disposables, was created by the FDA. So when they banned flavored pods in 2020, the Chinese companies just started churning out these cheap disposables by the millions. And that was for the US market. Then they just flooded the world market. So they're in the UK, they're in the Netherlands, they're in Australia, they're like everywhere. And there's a real danger that they're going to pull down the whole industry because everybody gets tarred with the same brush. Australia, I feel for you, man. It's pretty bonkers. It's really hard to understand. And the whole prescription model, somebody should go back and look at how well nicotine patches worked when they were prescription only. They didn't work. They didn't work because fewer people used them, and those that used them, they were less effective because they thought it was dangerous. Because having to get a prescription made you think it was more dangerous.
Yeah.
So people didn't make the transition from smoking to to not smoking with the patches. This is all bonkers. It's like people not thinking with their heads, not looking at the evidence. Just kind of, they have their own addiction to a completely different narrative. It's a weird narrative. It's almost a childish narrative of good and evil. But the world doesn't work that way.
We have a very big influence here. Like the TGA is pay to play, or the Therapeutic Goods Administration, they're pay to play organisation. And I've had a lot of, all of these silly 3-letter hoo-ha organisations all have the same narrative, right? But, I try and break it down as simple as I can. But the TGA here, you phone them or you email them, oh, we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 business days. Really? But this question, you sent me the email, I'm replying to your email. Oh, yeah, 2 to 3 days. You phone them, you get one answer from one person, 5 other answers from other people. And I said, you went out and tested all of these liquids and disposables. I think there's 130 on the list now. I said, where are all the testing parameters and where are all the findings and all the results? Oh, well, it had this. I said, no, that isn't. What is your method, your theory, your method, your hypothesis? What is it? It's not there. Yeah,
do you have a Freedom of Information Act?
Yes. Yeah, we put in requests for that, and when it came to asking about why the prescription model was put together and who was involved in the actual process, oh, that's national security. I said, excuse me, how the fuck can that be national security? I said, you got to be pulling my chain. I said, even the one that I requested and all the testing data, that data set, I want to read that data set as a developer and as a chemist myself. I want to read this data set. Bottom line, oh, we can't give that to you. It'll expose the companies. I said, you've named all the companies, you turkey. Now, hand over the data set and your testing protocols. Because
You turkey.
you're not telling, no, you're telling stories. You're not giving the public what they want. I'm sorry, but they won't even, they've crushed us putting together industry associations here for a start. Secondly, you have misinformation from the pharmaceutical industry here that are throwing so much money behind the scenes at the government, and the dirty little secret of the pharma industry here growing something that helps fuel your opioid problem throughout the world. It's horrifying. You know, we're a little country, but we're now at 1.1 million vapors. That jumped, it doubled actually.
Wow.
Over the last 2 years.
Wow.
And the reason being is because of the prescription model. They forced the people that were smokers openly to move across and buy illegal vapes. Now, September, the last couple of days, we were meant to see the first year results of how many prescriptions had actually been written. They need to publish it a month before the 1st of October. We still haven't seen that data set yet. But people behind the scenes are saying that certain states have written 15,000 prescriptions for the year. We want to see the whole data set. Seriously? 1.1 million vapors and 15,000 prescriptions from one state? Something doesn't add up here. It does not add up.
I was just going to ask you if there was any data on how many prescriptions have been made. Wow, we're not dealing with, I don't know, people who have a full deck. In some way, speaking of a house of cards, I don't know. It is puzzling beyond belief. There are examples in history where science has gone profoundly wrong. Most of them in the first half of the 20th century. One example is Lysenkoism in the Soviet Union. It was a false biological concept. The other is something called racial hygiene. And, I think that's the most instructive one for me, because I've looked at that history, and they had peer-reviewed journals, and they had international meetings, they had foundation funding, they had all the trappings of real science, but it was a bullshit science.
No,
that led to real harm.
They even use a study that had been debunked from the Banks paper, which was a pivotal point here in the prescription model. Okay, that was put together. Greg Hunt, the former health minister, Greg Hunt actually put that team together at the ANU, Australian National University. There's $750,000 report to say all vaping's bad. Patches and gums and sprays are good. I went, right. And then we started slapping that report around a little bit. Even before it got published, we knew and they said, oh, we went through 2,500 different studies. And I went, and you picked 10. That something doesn't add up there either. You know, there's more than 2,500 studies around the world now. I know of about 30,000 different studies and papers that could have been looked at. None of it was looked at. Yet Greg Hunt and his, I still remember what he said when he got put back into power. Vaping, not on my watch. It won't happen. And now we're trying to have this prescription model overturned and brought back to, you know, some normality. But the government still, even at the federal level, will not sit down and talk to the industry, the manufacturers, the developers, any of it. They won't do it. They don't want to. They don't want to hear from us. They don't want to see.
Right.
But we do have data sets. We do have real science. We know, like even, you know, companies that I work with in GMP manufacturing overseas, they won't even take those data sets on board.
How much of that is legacy of the FCTC? Where
Well, actually, a lot of it. A lot of it.
There's a fundamental, disconnect between public health and the tobacco industry, and anyone who is in the vape industry is in the tobacco industry by their thinking.
Yeah.
And then, I think that's, to me, that's part of why it's so important to actually try to mobilize the people who are actually using these gizmos to quit smoking, get them organized. But frankly, that's an uphill task because there's a lot of apathy. But we are people who use safer nicotine, right? That's like people who are living with HIV/AIDS. And so we need to demand a seat at the table. We need to have some input into research priority setting and policy making. That we're a long, long, long way away from that. And the vape industry is also far from that because they're just not going to trust you because they assume you're part of an evil big tobacco plot. It's childish. It is childish thinking, and I don't know how else to put it. But I think, to me, the only way to win is like change one mind at a time.
Well, we are trying, and I take my hat off to Fiona Patton, the MP, that was actually at
she's great.
GDFN, right? I take my hat off to her for what she did, and she's got more of an uphill battle now after attending that conference because she's now being tarred with a brush, but that conference opened her eyes to what the hell is really going on. And I hope somehow, and I don't know how she's going to do it, but I actually hope that she gets an invitation to COP10 because then watch the shit show, right? Because she will tag herself to, and she's got the power to do it here in Australia. If she can tag herself to our representative to the FCTC and she can get a seat or a walk in there, we really want to hear feedback from what's going on.
Yeah.
And trust me, she'll squeal like a pigeon. I mean it. She will go hammer and tong to get the information out to us.
I have a lot of respect for her. I think that she attended the GFN in 2019 as well.
Yeah, correct.
It's interesting for me to hear you say that she has whatever been harassed or slandered, I suppose, for attending the GFN in 2022.
Yeah.
By the way, we are planning a webinar on harassment.
Cool.
INCO is planning a webinar on, have you been harassed? Have you been slandered? Have you received ad hominem attacks? Have you been kicked out of meetings? There are members of our community who have received death threats. So the church, it's the Church of Tobacco Control, but they have some really nasty tactics. But Fiona is great, and we really need to start focusing on COP10.
Oh, exactly.
As well as the TPD in Europe, because that kind of is a trendsetter. So COP10, Panama City, I hope to see you all there.
Oh, it's one of my all-time favorite tracks. Van Halen, Panama. Bring it on.
Panama hat. But we do need to, so like we will ask our members to try to contact their delegates. Problem is the delegates are never announced, right? They're not. It's all in secrecy. But you do know who were the delegates last year and the year, well, 2 years ago and the year and 2 years before that and 2 years before that, and it's usually pretty much the same people. And trying to reach them is nearly impossible. But why are not consumers there in the meeting? Why, even as observers, when, what was it, COP26, the climate change COP, like they had fossil fuel companies there.
Oh, that was hilarious. No, but Australia was the one that actually had a stand there at the climate change conference, and it was sponsored by Santos. And I went, are you fucking joking? You guys are a fracking company. Are you kidding me? You're pulling my chain. It's unbelievable. But I'm with you. Panama is going to be a game changer if we can get someone inside and rattle what's going on out to the public. Like COP, the last one was an absolute joke when they said, well, we're not going to speak about novel or new novel products until 2023, which has given us a little bit of time to play the game. But I think now it's time to ramp it up from, and this is from member countries around the world, to actually rattle their representative and say, well, hang on a second, we're going to point our finger at you and we're going to give you naughty, naughty, naughty because you're telling bullshit or you're being fed with a whole bunch of lies and you're coming back here and you're feeding it to our government. Doesn't work that way anymore. We got you. We can see what you're doing. No more. Simple.
Hey, Charles, I sent you a link in the private chat. I don't know if you know how to get in there.
Yep, I can see it. I'm looking at the comments. I'm just going to say hello to Andrew Thompson.
Yeah. If you click private chat, there's a link there. I wanted to know if you wanted to go ahead and discuss a little bit about that.
Difference analysis of youth smoking and a ban on sales of flavored tobacco products in San Francisco. Yeah, so that's Abigail Friedman at Yale University. It's if this is the paper I'm thinking it is, this is the paper that showed that for a brief window of time when San Francisco had banned flavors before they banned e-cigarettes entirely, a complete prohibition, where they banned flavors, and in that brief window of time, it seems that high school students in San Francisco just, switched and went back to smoking cigarettes. So cigarette smoking increased, but it did not increase in surrounding school districts. There are dozens of studies like this that show that when you increase e-cigarette taxes, vaping goes down and smoking goes up, whether it's in teens or adults. And they're product substitutes. That's what happens. And when you make them less palatable, less acceptable to the users, then either you have little effect if they just all switch over to tobacco and mint or menthol, if those are still available, or you're just sending people back to smoking. Because the Church of Tobacco Control is so, there's one of their central tenets is that gateway effect. They can't comprehend the concept of product substitution. And it is worth mentioning here that because I've been working in public health for 30 years, almost nobody in public health ever took economics 101. So these like basic concepts like supply and demand and product substitution don't make any sense to them. And in general, the people in the field will tend to believe that all profit making is evil, including by pharmaceutical companies in some cases. So there's so much evidence, like Dr. Friedman's paper, that the policies being imposed to protect teens, like taxes and bans, are going to have incredible negative repercussions. We at INCO, we have a position statement on flavors, and it doesn't say don't ban them. It's a message to policymakers. It says if you're considering a ban, you should first conduct a careful health impact assessment. Right? If you're going to build a building or a bridge, you have to do an environmental impact assessment.
Evaluation, yeah.
Right? So I don't know why we don't do this in health. So here's a proposed policy. What is the likely health impact based on all the existing published evidence that we have to date? How many fewer teens are going to vape if you ban flavors? How many teens who were vaping are going to switch to cigarette smoking? How many adult vapors are going to relapse to smoking? How many fewer smokers are going to quit?
Yeah.
How many illicit substances are going to arise in the market and be sold with no age checks? And so, like, none of these possible, I would say probable, unintended consequences of just a flavor ban are ever considered. And Abigail's paper is well worth reading. Great graph showing the change in cigarette smoking increased in San Francisco schools after they banned flavors. It's bonkers. It's crazy.
Do you think that health assessment would include consequential things like financial impact? So, for example, people have dumped all their whole entire life savings into running a vape shop, and then you ban all this stuff, and then these people all of a sudden are out of work. I mean, that increases stress levels and things like that. I mean, they could consequentially fall into negative health impacts due to that too, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's just they don't care about you,
right?
If you run a vape shop,
yeah.
Because that you're part of the tobacco industry. You're part of the plot to lure teens into a lifetime of the horrors of nicotine addiction. So I do often see with the local debates that happen in the United States, a lot of the arguments that are being made. Because the most animated people in like a city council meeting are people who run the vape shop.
Yeah.
I think the argument that this is going to cause loss of jobs to mom and pop shops, it's important. That's part of the argument. But I mean, we also need to talk about the health impact, and we need to remind people. We need to remind people that smoking still kills people, right? People have forgotten that. Absolutely forgotten that.
Allie.
Okay. So I think I just had really one last question, in all honesty. a lot of these interactions that you have on Twitter, along with a lot of us, are not always so nice. So what advice would you give this Italian Spanish woman to stay calm and not get, and stay, professional and try to make a difference and not get frustrated, I guess.
That's a really good question.
You do it so well, so don't.
That applies to the Sicilian as well.
I lose my cool sometimes too. If you followed me for a long time, you will see I've really tried to shift further and further toward mostly respectful, just share the evidence. Sometimes I just start something with hashtag fact check and I just share the evidence.
Yeah.
Listen to Skip. Skip.
Yeah.
Let Skip be the conscience of our, in some ways, of our community and others too. You're good.
Yeah, agreed.
You're actually really quite good.
I do try to just avoid, people get nasty and will come after you purposefully to get you upset. And, we all have our days. So, I try to just take a step away from the computer at that time. So I don't do anything that I wouldn't want to see tomorrow,
It's hard to know where they're coming from, right? Some of them are trolls and some of them are kind of innocent and misinformed.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to try to gauge that. But in the end, I think that, there are a lot of contentious issues like on vaccines or abortion or like pick a topic, gun control.
Anything. Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of discussion around how to bridge divides and how to have respectful dialogue between people who actually disagree with each other, and then it becomes about okay, what are the things we can agree on, and then what are the things we disagree on, and then why, what's the different information that we have that's making us interpret this that way, whatever. I sometimes I start with, okay, once you get beyond, okay, smoking kills people, it killed my father, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There are two things we can all agree on, which is one is reducing teen nicotine use, and the other one is reducing death.
Yeah.
And it's pretty hard to argue with either of those, against either of those things. And then the question that just because, well, how do we, if that's the goal, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And that then, I'm surprised, sometimes you get a person who's actually willing to think.
And that one person is what makes all the other people that you deal with worth it, I think.
Yep. And then the other, 9 out of 10 will just block you.
Yep. Oh, I've been blocked and I haven't even said anything.
or accuse you of working for Big Tobacco, and which is
show them that Big Tobacco check, Allison.
Oh, yeah. I'm still waiting for it. It still hasn't shown up.
The thing is, they have no idea how offensive that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did all of this to get away from that.
California show their big check from MSA, and then we'll show them our big check from Big Tobacco, and we'll compare.
Let's see who's
There's a few extra zeros in California's
just
check.
a few.
Just a few extra zeros.
Lindsay Stroud has been doing some good work on that.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Is it Lindsay who's trying to trace Bloomberg funding?
Yeah.
Waiting for that to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's good. That's Lindsay. She keeps receipts.
Yeah, we need to get Lindsay back on the show again. One of these
days. Oh, and out of the blue, look who appears. G'day, Bruni. No, Lindsay's been helping me a lot with tracking down the dark money that's been floating through our universities here in Australia. And trust me, once we helped Alan Lopez, Professor Lopez, find the door for being touchy-feely like Lance, he got ousted after we ramped that up on Twitter, and he got found out to be a naughty little boy. And we also found out that a lot of the money was flowing through him into Australia and through his little school. And Banks, there's a very nice little photo of Banks and Lopez back in 2015 at the Western Australian Anti-Smoking and Cancer Council type situation. But we've got a lot of people here with their head up their ass and their head in the sand both ways, and they won't listen to us. They all think that we work for this person, that person, whatever person. But when you give them scientific data, good luck in them listening to us. They look at us as if, oh, okay, well, you're some mad professor that sits in a lab all day concocting things for children. Really? I don't see it that way at all.
Well, the thing that I find interesting too is that you can even take like honest data or honest posted articles like the Cochrane Library or something like that, and you can try to set that in front of somebody who might have the propensity to be a critical thinker. And the one thing I always liked about the Cochrane Library is they really don't have any, they don't take any money from conflict of interest type sources and things like that, you know. So it's really more of an honest preview, you know, into their study results. And it's just shocking to me that, you know, you just still get the people who are just so close-minded to the whole idea that, you know, vaping is worse than smoking. And that just blows my mind. Just, you know, how much they're poisoned to think that, that in fact it is worse. And again, there's your $10,000 question. Well, then fine. If it is worse, show me the one person that's died from it now.
Right.
You know?
I think it's worth wondering at how giddy some of the ants seem to be. Excuse me, when supposedly bad news comes out, right? But the next, like, e-cigarettes, e-cigarettes make fingers grow out of your neck, right? Which come in handy, but or whatever it is, erectile dysfunction.
You can get that from vaping now.
Gives you male pattern
baldness, baldness,
skin disease, and so on. Whatever you can imagine.
Yeah, just throw it out there.
Positively giddy with happiness at that news because it confirms their preconceived ideas.
Right.
But that's really creepy.
They just can't wait to rub it in our faces too and post about it. And it's like, we're all users of these products. Like no one is listening to, and we're all adults. No one is listening to anything that we have to say. And that's, I think, even more mind blowing. I'm like, been vaping for 9 years. Like, I'm healthier than I've ever been. Like, this is real data. I have real proof from my doctor, who wasn't in favor of vaping, wasn't against it either when I first started going to her, but now is 100% supportive of it and actually recommends it to to patients that she sees that smoke. Like, there is a benefit when you see it in real life. And it's really upsetting that we can't even get the conversation started.
So I do wonder at that. I think more, and so doctors are profoundly misinformed for starters about nicotine and everything else, but more and more doctors are going to start seeing patients who were smokers and made the switch and are healthier.
Yep.
And that's got to be a good thing. That's just inevitable. That's going to happen. So one mind at a time. That I keep hearing that story, Ellie, about doctors. Like, this is my personal doctor I've had for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were against it at first, and now they saw what it did for my health, and it changed their mind.
Right. Well, I mean, I almost died from a blood clot, and when she got my, all my paperwork from New York, all of my records transferred, she was like, "We ran all these blood tests, and you're not showing." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I vape now, and I don't smoke anymore."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, you don't want to stay on nicotine forever." And I was like, "Well, why not?" I was like, do you want to drink coffee forever? You want caffeine forever? And I actually recently took a cue from Mallory, I think it was, and I gave her my Colin Mendelsohn book. I was like, you need to do a little reading on this. And she actually messaged me and said it's fantastic. And she's actually learned a lot. So that to me is really promising, because one doctor will tell another doctor, and that's one more person that, you know, in a position that people will listen to, that is saying the right thing.
The problem
needs to be highlighted.
Yeah.
Pardon?
The problem is that everybody lives on daytime TV doctors. So Dr. Oz, Dr. Phil, all those doctors, you know, whatever they say is gold. Whatever they
are terrifying. If I was vaping and sitting home on my couch and I saw that, I'd be like, oh my God, it's worse than smoking all over again. And I might throw it out. Like that. I know that they say they're not directed towards adults, but there is no disclaimer on the TV that says if you're 21 or older, cover your ears and close your eyes. So, you know, it's inevitable that adults are going to see this information.
I think it's extremely disturbing to me, just putting this out there, when I know for a fact that trusted health authorities are lying to me. That's I don't know what to do with that.
Right. Why should I trust you on anything else now? Now I should be skeptical of everything you say, which puts you in a really scary place.
But that's damaging to them as well in the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, the financial change that would take place if vaping were to be accepted and get away from the tobacco industry. You got life insurance companies don't have to ask you any longer do you smoke or do you vape. I mean, the list just goes on and on. So it's just a battle for pharmaceutical companies to insurance companies to your work to it's never ending. That's why I think this fight will never end, even when we do get an okay from the FDA and accept every single entire PMTA and we move forward. There's always going to be another organization that's going to be out there, whether it's the insurance company, the pharmaceutical companies, or your own company that you work with, where, you know, they're just going to say, we don't care what the FDA says. We don't want you vaping at work.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Okay. My argument to that, and it's been my argument, and I've been in the trenches since 2014 now. My argument here in Australia, because we used to have smoko breaks when you used to be able to go out and have a cigarette, right? That's what it was called. And I said to them, what if you had a device? You're running a warehouse, you're driving around on a forklift, picking orders, you're in fulfillment. What if you could actually ride around on your forklift and you could vape? You're not taking time off. And you're actually filling the orders. You're not going out for 5-10 minutes every
but Nancy sitting next to you is pissed off because she thinks she's getting cancer.
Hey, I don't give a flying fuck about Nancy. You're riding around a warehouse.
Nancy's in the cubicle next to you.
No. If you're riding around on a forklift in a warehouse, you're in procurement or doing stuff like that, right? You should be able to vape in your workspace. You're not going outside every 5 minutes to smoke a cigarette. That's for a start. Secondly, productivity goes up. Third, right, and I'm reaching out to you, Mr. Amazon, let them vape on the line. If you're doing orders,
we'll get our packages faster.
Or you already get them faster than anywhere else in the fucking world. Don't even go there with logistics.
24 hours, baby.
You're saying vaping would increase productivity?
Yeah, correct. No, think about this. For a minute, Charles, from neurodiversity. Nicotine keeps your brain switched on. It keeps you like on the ball. Bang, bang, bang. Think about it. It's not a stupid thought. And I actually said that to one of our unions here, and they looked at it, and that's why they're allowing vaping on building sites now. It changed the whole scope here.
The only thing is, there's so much research on productivity, workplace productivity. I think that there is pretty solid data that workers who take a 5 or 10 minute break every 2 hours are more productive. even
Correct.
even counting in the 10-minute loss of time.
I missed all that, but
So-
I can see the new slogan in Australia: nicotine makes you more productive.
Yeah,
Well,
it increases your focus, attention, and memory.
You won't get an erection, but you will be more productive.
You won't use as many sick days.
Unbelievable.
Maybe you can go with that angle.
Oh,
According
You
to
gotta
the
try-
Willie survey, that's another myth. So
guys are
All right.
gonna lie on that poll. They're gonna
all
lie.
right.
on
Point,
that poll,
point taken.
that. Every guy that's coming out of Walmart is going, "Oh no, not at all, not at all."
worked fine.
Everything's
The wife's just sitting there going, "It's been 6 months, hon. Vape something quick." Oh, Charles, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been nice
Yes,
getting
thank
to
you
know
so
you.
much.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
guys want to?
likewise, great to talk to you.
Yeah, welcome back. We'd love having you back, and we can dig a little deeper and stuff. And Timmy, would you like to say some goodbyes to Charles?
Absolutely. Well, now
There it
that I've
is.
taken myself off of mute. No, thank you, Charles. I appreciate the information and the message that you share on Twitter. And it's nice to see such a loud vocal voice in the corner of vaping, that you understand the benefits to it. But really, honestly, we're very happy that you came on the show tonight. And it's been a wonderful pleasure meeting you. And love to have you back anytime.
Yeah. Hey, Ozzy, you're up. Is he muted too?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I'm answering questions that people are
Okay, you're a good man.
trying to throw at Charles behind the scenes. No, it's good actually sitting down with you, Charles. And the last time we were together on a Zoom call was to do with music, and we're all trying to play music, and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning for me, and actually someone in the group said 5-1 says he'll turn up with a beer. I did. I don't care. Always try for a beer any time in the world. I don't care.
You make those adult choices, Paul.
It's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
I know. Well, it was 5 a.m. for me. So yeah, it's 5 o'clock. I don't give a flying fuck. But no, good talking to you, Charles.
Vape, it'll make you more productive.
Thank you so much for coming on,
Brought to you
Charles.
by the Health Board of
You
Australia.
see this clock behind me here, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always accurate twice a day.
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
I'll set it to 5. I think that would be more appropriate.
There you go.
It does work, by the way. But
Actually, that's a good campaign. It's always 5 somewhere.
It's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
it's good philosophy.
It's for alcohol, Paul.
It's a song.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
mine's always set to 4:20. So yeah, we won't do that.
420.
That's good too.
420 and vaping. It will make you more productive. Brought to you by the Australia
know
Board of
about that.
Education. Come
don't
join
know
us
about
this Saturday for. No, I'm joking. Allison, you're up.
Yes, thank you so much, Charles. I really appreciate you coming on. I hope that you come back because clearly we have so much more information that we could go through. I feel like.
Yeah, we enjoyed you being here, and we will see everybody next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Like and share the video, and that's it. We are out of here.
Thanks, guys.
Let me bye-bye. Let me find the right button. There.
Bye.